What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? This is the legendary Founding Titan. Um, yeah, so we're going up against AI again. I know I'm a noob, but it helps me concentrate a little bit better. So today I was thinking, and between Halo Wars 2 and Halo Wars 1, right? Um, I was thinking since there is 120 units, right? Um, there's 120 units in Halo Wars 2, and there's only, depending on which faction you were in the first game, there was only 40 if you were UNSC, but there was 50 if you were Covenant. Um, now this didn't occur to me before, but I completely forgot that every basically every faction, or sorry, every unit, I mean to say, um they all cost a lot more in Halo Wars 2 than they did in the previous game. And I'm gonna kind of jump over and basically we're gonna investigate. Uh, does the pop actually mean anything versus the first game, or is it the same amount of stuff you could have in the first game, right? So, um, so for starters, the unit value for Marines, right? You can in the first game you can have 40 Marines. You can have 40 Marines, and you can have, because they only cost one value. They have only one pop value, and what I mean by that is, well, if you look actually there's three. My bad. There's three here in the first game. They are one. So, right. So basically, in the first game, yeah, it was one value, and there was only 40 pops, so you can have 40 Marines. With the 120 pop, however, on Halo Wars 2, the Marines being costing 3 makes it to where the Marine counter is literally the exact same. So, despite having 120 pop, you would still have only 40 Marines. Now, that's not to say the same for everything, though, for sure. So, for instance, the Covenant, their squads cost 2. And their pop is also, of course, 120 in Halo Wars 2. In the first game, they were also 1. So in the first game, Halo Wars 1, the Covenant could have 50, and in the second game, since they cost 2, they can have 60. So there is a bit of a increase there, for sure. And yeah, so there is a bit of an increase there by a 10. Now, it might not seem like a whole bunch yet, but I'm gonna dive in with you, and we're gonna explore something that makes a huge difference, actually, and that is in my opinion, the vehicle section, actually. So, so in Halo Wars 1, you could have, I think it was 40 Warthogs, as a Unicy. And I think in this game they cost 4 pop per each Warthog, which means that they actually only, you can actually only have 30 Warthogs here. Note that the Warthogs are a lot better here, though, than the previous game. They're a lot more durable and stuff. Although I don't think they're faster or anything. I definitely don't think that, but they are definitely like tankier. Damaging, probably not as damaging in the second game either. So their viability is definitely fallen off a little bit. Which, I mean, thank God. For real. I mean, good lord, Warthogs were like OP as hell back then. But yeah, so there's only 30 Warthogs in Halo Wars 2. Now, in terms of like the new unit, which I guess technically takes the Warthog's place as the Warthog, but yeah, it takes the Warthog's place in the second game, which is the Jackrabbit. It acts more like the Scout than the Warthog does. Warthog more likely acts like a kind of like almost like a main, I guess, sort of. It acts more like a mainline unit rather than just a simple scout unit. But not that I would build like a million of them, but it would be nice to have at least a couple, I guess, just to throw in there if you have the extra pop. But yeah, so with that being said, the Jackrabbits can have up to 40. Yeah, they can have up to 40. So really the scout department, I guess, is pretty much the same. But for the mainline vehicles, right? Scorpions in the first game costed 3 pop, like Scorpions and stuff. They cost 3 pop, and in the second game they cost 7. Now that may seem like a drastic difference. In hindsight, that is a big difference. However, when it comes down to it, though, really, the tanks actually have more here for the UNSC. The UNSC actually have, in the first game, they could have up to 13 Scorpion tanks. In the second game, they can have up to 17, which is a little bit of a difference, especially since Scorpions are a bit... I'm not sure if I'd go as far to say better, because in the first game they were really overpowered, but they are still quite viable here. Really good for breaking lines of defense for sure. Nevertheless, though, the value or being better or not, there is indeed more tanks there by 4 more, which is quite nice. As far as the other vehicles go, so there's the Wolverine, which the Wolverine here is 4, and in Wars 1 it was 2. In Wars 2, you can have, I believe, 30. Yeah, you can have 30 Wolverines. And in the second game, or sorry, that is the second game. In the first game, you can have 20 Wolverines. In the second game, you can have 30. So, that's a huge difference. You can have 30 freaking Wolverines. Unfortunately, though, the Wolverines, I will have to say, are a lot better in the first game. I think that everyone knows that by now, really. But, yeah, it is a bit of a shame. But, because Wolverines were able to do a lot of damage to ground here, like as well as ground with their Y abilities. Here, not so much. They don't really do a whole lot to ground. They're really only air, which kind of sucks, I guess. But I mean, I can see why they did that change, I suppose. So yeah, Wolverines, a huge difference in Halo Wars 2. You can have a lot more of them. Now, when it comes to the Halo Wars 1 Cobra, it's the same as the Wolverines. You can have, it's 2 pop in the first game, and there's 20 you can have. Now, the Cobra did not come over, they did not port the Cobra over to the second game, so it's kind of hard to make this comparison. But I guess the closest thing we have to a Cobra here would, I guess, be the Kodiak, really, since it acts like a artillery piece. The Cobra didn't really, it was more like a, I guess, a sniper anti-vehicle piece, but it did have quite a bit of range on it. So I guess if you want to make the comparison to anything, it would have to be Cobra to Kodiak. So we'll do that. So Cobras can have 20, and Kodiaks can have. That would be. No, that'd be 20. Okay, yeah. So no, that'd be fucking 20. All right. So it's literally the same as the Cobras. So they can both have 20. God, I really need to go back to school to do some math. My math skills have fallen. Back then I could do that instantly, but yeah. So, but anyway, that would be 20 for both of them. The unit value for air is also a major difference as well. So in the first game, I think Hornets were 2 pop. So you can have, like once again, 20 Hornets, and in the third Halo Wars, that's never gonna happen. The second Halo Wars, you can have the pop here is 4, so that'd be 30. So you can have 30 Hornets here. So again, another huge difference. I can't really compare the Nightingales to anything, but it is 30 as well. Because there was only 2 different areas in the game. 3 if you count the Hawks, but really the Hawks are just a upgraded version of the Hornet, so I don't know. But either way, if you want to compare the Hawk to something, it'd be, I guess, the Nightingale, which is like, once again, 30. And for vultures get a huge upgrade. Because in the first game you can only have like 6. Their pop value was like 6, and it only allowed you to have 6 vultures. Here, I'm pretty sure it's around like 13, something like that. Yeah, I think it's 13 or so. I could be wrong on that. I don't think I am. But yeah, I think it's 13, something like that. But yeah, basically doubling the amount of vultures you could have in the first game. As far as like special units go, the UNSC didn't have special units, so that's a whole new ballpark. But to compare it to something like the Covenant had Scarabs, which was their ultimate unit, and to compare it to the UNSC's Condor, which they got now, they have you can have, in the first game you can only have 2 Scarabs. Now you can have 3. And yeah, so I think that's a major difference, just having that extra Scarab, because not only, like, you can either have like, you can either have 3 Scarabs, or you can have 2 Scarabs with like a bunch of support units. Either way, depending on your choice. But I find that interesting. So let's jump into I guess now let's jump into what you would call it, the Banished, because I think I compared it all to the UNSC already. So the Banished versus the Covenant for unit value. So once again, there's Scarabs. You can have an extra Scarab here, unlike in the first game. So for their infantry, they're the Jackals. Actually, shoot, I just now realized something. The Jackals aren't even in the Banished. Shit. I guess the Jackals would be compared to the Sniper Elites, Elite Rangers. I mean, so the Elite Rangers can have their value. I think is 3 or 4. No, definitely. I think it's 3. So you can have 40 Elite Rangers. In the first game, you can have 50 Jackals. I'm not really sure why you would want 50 Jackals, but you can have it. But yeah, But yeah, so for the Banished, you can have up to 20. Sorry, 30 elite rangers, or no, 40. God dang it, 40. Jesus Christ, you can have up to 40. And then for the hunters, I think the hunters is also a little bit less, but note that the hunters are also a lot better here. I feel they seem to do a lot more damage, or not really damage, but they seem to tank a lot more actually, and they are able to deal with infantry a lot better than they could in the first game. Because in the first game, a single marine could like take out a hunter, but in this game, not so much. So in the first game, you can have 25 hunters. In this game, you have 24. About the same, but it is a bit lower. Well, one lower. Not that big a deal, but overall, it's less though. When it comes to vehicles, wraiths in the first game, I think you can have up to, I think it's like 16. Yeah, because units you can have 13 scorpions, and the wraiths are the same value, so that would be, yeah, 16. And in this game, I think they can have 20, because they're the same value as a Kodiak, and Kodiaks are 20 as well. So you have 20 wraiths versus your 16 in the first game. So a little bit of a difference. The tanks, the vehicles definitely got a bit of an increase. As far as infantry goes, most of the time it's either a little bit less or equivalent to what the first game had. So realistically speaking, you're not really missing out on too much if you're wanting just full-on infantry battles, I guess. But yeah, but the second game for air units for the Banished, engineers are a bit less, I think, because engineers in the first game were 1, so they can have 50 engineers, and in this game they can have 40. But engineers are also a lot more viable here. Like, they're always pretty good, but like now especially, since now they can even pop shields, which is quite impressive. Banshees in the first game can have 25. That sounds about right, 25. And in this game they can have a whopping 40, I think. A big increase by 15 extra Banshees in your force. However, the Banshees here are laughable in comparison to the first game for sure. So, and then the rest of the units I really can't compare to, just because there really isn't any similarities to any of them. Because there's just the Vampire, which that's like the only other air vehicle they had in Wars 1. Yeah, I got nothing really to compare it to, because I can't really compare it to Shrouds, because Shrouds are a support unit. I can't compare it to Blisters, because they're a artillery piece. So, yeah, really nothing to compare it to, but for reference, I guess, though, I think Blisters can have, like, 17 or so. Yeah, I think it's like 17. And then for Shrouds, it's 40. Or, sorry, it's 30. Yeah, it's 30. Overall, though, do I think that there is less... Like, does the pop limit mean anything different in Wars 2 versus Wars 1, with the different unit values being so high in some cases? It definitely makes a difference in the vehicle department for sure. Infantry, not so much. Air, definitely. Air gets like almost double what they used to have. Especially, units C almost across the entire board get like a shit ton more here, just because of that extra buffer of units they get in the second game, since, you know, they only could get 40 in the first. But when it comes to the Covenant, like, the Covenant really don't get too much extras. Apart from, again, vehicles, just because uh, vehicles were kind of expensive in the first game for pop value versus here. They are more expensive here, but there's just a lot more pop to work with, and it gives them that extra boost of like a few, or like 4 to 5 plus more vehicles you could have in your army. Yeah, but really the battle's size is about equivalent, I would say, for the most part, until you get to like the bigger stuff, like the heavy vehicles and ultimate units. You can have a lot more of those, but as far as infantry goes, it's arguably less, but it's not that big of a deal really, because infantry also plays a far bigger role, in my opinion, in some scenarios than it did in the first game here. So, overall, the battles are definitely bigger for sure in the second game. There is no doubt about that. By how much bigger, it's not by a huge extent, but with the powers and everything else on top of it, it does make it seem like it's a lot bigger. And also, you gotta put into account that there's also a lot bigger vehicles in Wars 2. Like, Nightingales are a bit bigger than your... Well, not, I guess not that much bigger, but they're a bit bigger than Hornets, nevertheless. And then Mastodons are pretty big. You got Colossuses, which are those ginormous mechs that Johnson can get. Grizzlies are actually a lot better here now, so there's a lot more reason to get them. And then you got the legendary Condor, which is so nice to see that the units finally get their own ultimate. But yeah, so yeah, ultimately the battles are definitely bigger because of just the bigger units, the more units, like the units in the old game that were big, like the vultures, for instance. Vultures were typically never really seen besides for like suicide missions, really, in the first game. Because they were so squishy, and you wouldn't really want to build them because they were so pop inefficient, especially if you're fighting a scarab. So, overall though, yeah, the battles are definitely bigger here. Let me know what your thoughts are of if you enjoy the unit pop more here or not, or if you prefer the first game just because maybe your favorite unit had more, I guess, value to it, like Banshees. I know Banshees were a colossal, like they were so much worse in the second game for sure. No doubt about that. But yeah, so let me know what your thoughts are about this. I just thought it was a kind of interesting idea because I never really thought of it until like recently. That the fact that your unit value is actually really far less than you would think, considering you have 120 pop, but realistically, like, it's almost equivalent to the first game, just because like I said, apart from the heavy vehicles do make quite the big difference. Because it may not seem like that much, like 4 more tanks, whoop-de-doo, I guess, but like when you put in consideration that there is 6 players, that 4 difference means that there is like 24 more heavy vehicles on the battlefield. That is quite a big number if you think about it. That's crazy to think about. Just 24 extra units because of that slight difference. Because the heavy vehicles do play a huge role in Wars 2 for sure. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. I would like to hear some of your comments about what you thought about this video for the pop. I don't know if it was interesting or not to you, or if you already knew about it, but this is something I just kind of thought of, the pop value, if it's actually more or less in Wars 2, and it definitely is a bit more, not by much if you're considering infantry, and hell, it's actually less for infantry, but yeah, for those heavy vehicles, it definitely is there, that there is a bit more value in Wars 2. There's a lot more tanks you can't actually get. So, yeah, so I'll leave it at that for now. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like and comment below this time. And as always, I will see you in the next one. Bye, guys.